cool. So why On Purpose? Why do we exist? So at On Purpose, we basically believe that the economic system that has been created is not working for anybody. We're using resources in an unsustainable way. This is threatening our planet. We're treating our people poorly and at the expense of others, meaning that many people can't live fulfilled and happy lives. And I think looking around some of the crises around us, whether that's the current cost of living or even the COVID-19 pandemic, it's quite sort of obvious how fragile our economic system really is. But crucially, we are optimists. We believe that the way our economy works is something we can actually challenge and we can change. It is a social construct, so ultimately it can be redesigned to benefit people and planet. So On Purpose exists because we believe it's only by developing leaders who will create new types of organizations and also transform old sort of types of organizations that will be able to create the change needed. And we do this through the associate program as well as sort of the wider work that On Purpose does by offering an opportunity to both organizations as well as individuals to experiment, to challenge, and to debate new ways of leading and working. And by doing so, we're creating a community of people who really have the desire to do things differently. And at this point, our community is spread across the world, working to create a more positive future in a wide range of areas. So whether that's reforestation as a means of mitigating climate change, through to really redesigning education systems to serve children better. So what's the shape of the associate program? So basically the shape of your year as an associate is that you work in 2 organizations for the year. So each for 6 months, you work with them for 4.5 days per week, and you get paid £24,000 per annum, which works out as about £2,000 gross per month. On your Friday afternoon, you then join your cohort and On Purpose for a Friday training session. So you have that Friday training session every week. Throughout your year, you're supported by 2 mentors whom you meet with fortnightly. Those mentors are usually linked to your placement organization. So if there's anything particular that you're working on at placement or that you need support with in terms of setting placement objectives, that's something that you could potentially talk to your mentors about. You also get supported by an executive coach. We meet around 8 times a year. And I guess, with Paul and Sergio, I believe we'll be talking about this a little bit later, but your coach is really to, I guess, help you explore, your personal journey during this year and help you sort of get to where you wanna go to. And then finally, obviously, as an associate, you join our community and develop your network of people and organizations working on social and environmental issues, which we think will set you up pretty nicely to establish a career in the space at the end of the program. Who do we work with? So we work with 2 cohorts each year, between 16 to 20 people, usually, or it's been at least for the last 2 years, it's been, I think, 20 people, and the same number of organizations which are working to create positive social and environmental impact. Our cohorts launch in April and October of each year, and we're currently open for applications to our April 24 cohort. So if you are to join us, then you'll be joining us in April of next year. Our associates are sort of really join us from a range of different sectors and functions and projects. So for instance, this is our April, or the majority of our April 22 cohort. I think Sergio is also on the picture, but I think, sorry, Sergio, you just got cut off. He was, I think, on the bottom right side. But yeah, so this is really a very mixed bunch of people in terms of the experience that they have. So we have experience within sort of academia, engineering, marketing, international development, law, consultancy, and more. So yeah, really a mixed bunch of people. But what they all have in common is that they all have a minimum of 3 years of work experience, most often in commercial environments. And they all have the desire to sort of do things differently, to change the way that they work, and to move into organizations where they could make a positive impact. So yeah, so each of our associates really quits their job, joins us for a year, and according to our latest impact statistics, 90% of them continue to work in social and environmental impact after the program, which is pretty cool. Considering who we work with, who do we actually look for? Or what do we look for in our associates? So in terms of the sort of basic eligibility criteria, we look for you to have a minimum of 3 years of work experience, and that excludes any internships or sort of voluntary or extracurricular projects. So it needs to be really a solid 3 years of work experience. You also need the right to work in the UK, as we're not able to sponsor any visas, and you need to be fluent in English. The majority of our organizations are within the UK, mostly around London, but some in other places too. So that's quite important, obviously. Other than sort of basic elements, we are also looking for further elements within associates. So we're looking for people who can see and seize opportunities and who are able to really challenge themselves and others. We really want people to have good interpersonal skills that allow them to work successfully on a placement and with different teams and stakeholders and organizations. We're also looking for people who are open and flexible to new ideas, who are resilient and who are able to really tell us why they want to be part of the space and part of on purpose. And finally, we really want people to have problem-solving skills. So people who are able to break down challenges into sort of more manageable chunks. People are able to analyze data to bring insight into a challenge, and someone who's able to kind of see the big picture as well as the smaller details within an issue or a project. So let's briefly look at some of our placement organizations. So as I said, for each cohort, we bring together a range of sort of different placement opportunities at different organizations. Within the projects that associates work on, we really look for projects where our associates can bring value to, but where they'll also have an opportunity to really learn and develop. And I'd say we're quite business model agnostic, as we think that there are a lot of different ways to create impact. And some of the logos you'll see here are some of the organizations we've worked with in the past or working with currently. So, and I think you already see that how different these organizations are. So Opvox is a social enterprise, Samaritans is a charity, King's College London is an educational institution. So really different types of organizations, which also means very different projects. So a few placement examples we have are, we had an associate recently who was working on a project with King's College London's widening participation department to improve the access of disadvantaged people into Russell Group universities. We had someone who recently built a model for a Systemic, which is a sustainability consultancy, a model to analyze the outcomes of different plastic policy packages with, basically helping policymakers make the right decisions around like how to most effectively reduce plastic pollution. We've had an associate who was working with Samaritans to diversify the organization's income streams. So I think it illustrates quite nicely how different the organizations are, as well as the type of projects that you would be working with as an associate. Okay, let's look at the learning and development part a little bit closer. So learning development is really a vital part of the program. So as I mentioned, every Friday afternoon as an associate, you come together with your cohort for training sessions that we think will help equip you with a wide range of knowledge and skills, and also a mindset to enable change. I think, spending half a day a week for a year on your learning and development and your kind of, self-development is a real privilege, and will definitely help equip you with the vital knowledge you need to succeed in the sector. The learning development program is really built around two core areas of learning. So you have firstly, impact. So how do you fund, measure, and scale impact? And then secondly, leadership. So how do you connect to yourself? How do you lead a thriving organization? And how might you drive systemic change? Okay, a quick look at our impact according to our fellows. Looking at some of the statistics, I think it's pretty great. So in London, we would have worked with almost 700 people by the end of this year. And I think we're coming up to 1,000 fellows leading the change next year. Yeah, which is incredible. So yeah, looking at the slides, so 96, but sort of ending the program, 96% feel that what they're doing with their life now is meaningful. 100% of people who had completed the program recently felt that their cohort helped them develop professionally, and 92% left the program feeling ready to lead change. And I mean, you'll hear from obviously Sergio, who's a fellow, in a little bit, but fellows really go on to do a range of amazing things. So whether that's, I'd say probably 50% maybe stay with one of their placement organizations, whether that's for a fixed term contract or a longer position. Other than that, people go on to do, you know, all sorts of different things. So we have a fellow working to make fishing more sustainable. We have a fellow who's running an organization similar to On Purpose, but for refugees and asylum seekers and breadwinners. You may have heard of them before. We have a fellow who founded an online newspaper for people working in the impact space. So there's really, yeah, a number of things I could go on. So yeah, so you've heard a lot about the different aspects of the program, but now I'm sure you want to know, how can you join us as an associate? So in order to apply, you have to first of all register your interest in the program via our website, and I'm sure the majority would have already done this. If you haven't, just go and do it now. Once you register your interest, you then start to receive a series of emails which tell you a little bit more about the program. The emails also contain the application form link. So that's how you actually apply. And then also the deadline to apply, which is the 23rd of October, 2023. For your application, there are really two elements. So I would say it's quite a simple application. So you need your CV, and we really recommend that you include any voluntary projects or any extracurricular things that you've sort of done or worked on. And then secondly, you need your motivation to join the program. And that's a number of, I think, 4 questions which sort of assess your skill set and your motivation a little bit more. When answering these questions, I'd really suggest that I'd recommend that you use the STAR method. So situation, task, action, result. So situation, outline maybe a couple of lines, just give like an outline of the situation, you know, what was the context. Task, what was the task? So what did someone task you to do? What was your responsibility? Action, so what did you actually do, and how did you go about doing it? And then result, what was the outcome of the situation? What happened in the end? And this really helps us effectively assess your different answers. Just a really quick note on ChatGPT. We are aware that some candidates may be using ChatGPT to answer these types of application questions. I will say that we're able to detect it to some extent, and I would really encourage you to use your own ideas, your own experience, your own writing, and your own voice. It really, really makes a difference in the applications that we receive. Cool. So once you have basically gone through the application stage, you'll be invited to an interview if you're successful. And this interview involves 2 personal experience interviews, which kind of dig a little bit deeper into your motivation and your skills and how you might apply them on the program. And then we're also asking for candidates to complete a practical case study interview, which looks more at, I guess, problem solving, sort of some analytical and logical thinking as well. But don't worry about that just now, because when you get the invite to interview, we'll offer you a session with someone from the program team to, basically, support your preparation for the interview. You also get a mock case study to work on. So don't worry about it, basically. Okay, so once you've gone through interview, we've offered you a place, you've accepted, yes, you want to be an associate. We go through a matching process. So this is how the associates and organizations are matched. And basically it's a two-phase process, where first of all, we'll send you all of the placement summaries of all of the organizations that we'll be working with for that year. So you have all of those summaries, you read through all of them, you choose your top 8 placements, and then you rank them in order of preference. And the placements do the same for associates. So we'll basically be asking you to provide us with a 1-minute video where you talk, just a little bit about yourself, your passions, where you're kind of hoping of going. And then, and based on that, the placement sort of rank the associates. You then have a matching day. So that's a sort of virtual, almost like a speed dating session with the placements, where I think you get 5 minutes with a placement. And then after that's done, a complex algorithm matches associates and placements. So we're currently do that. We're currently at the matching phase, and it's very, very full on. And the truth is, nobody is guaranteed a specific placement or associates, but we absolutely take our best. I'm seeing this happen right now. So we really do our best to take into account everyone's desires and whether it's an associate or placement, so that everyone ends up happy. And usually it works out quite well. I will say, so I've seen this for 2 years, and usually, it works out well. I don't know, Sergio and Rupal, whether, how it went for you.
Yeah, I can go. Yeah, it worked out really well for me, actually. I think I got my number 1 that I put in as my second placement. And the first placement I got was, I think I ranked it as number 4. But yeah, it really is just, you just don't know the outcome, because I really enjoyed my first placement as well, much more than I thought I would. So yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Sergio?
Yeah, I think both my placements were quite high up my list. The main thing to bear in mind actually is that whichever placement you end up getting, as Ruhal said, your experience in the actual role might differ from what your preconception would have been, and whatever the organization, there's a lot to learn from the experience. So I've enjoyed both my placements a lot. That's what I can say.
Yeah, agree. Thank you. Yeah, from speaking to, number of fellows and associates, that's kind of what the picture that I got as well. Amazing. Well, I think I'll hand over to Sergio at this point. We'll be, taking you through a little bit of his journey. I'll put myself on mute.
Sure. Yeah, so my journey, I guess when I was at school, I always wanted to do something purpose-driven. And, when I was applying for university, I was thinking about, maybe becoming a doctor, but then I wasn't sure I could stand the gory stuff. So then I was like, what's the next most useful thing I could do? I know what, I'll go and do law. So that's how I ended up studying law at university. And when I was finishing, I was a slightly reluctant corporate lawyer, essentially. I didn't want to come out of law school without having lined up a job, and I was fortunate enough to have got a training contract at an international law firm called Allen Overy, where I qualified into their litigation team. What I found was that I was most engaged with the work that had a purpose element, particularly the pro bono work that I did there. So I eventually left and joined one of my pro bono clients, Fair Trials, on a couple of projects, and I really loved it. Yeah, unfortunately, they didn't have any permanent roles available at the time, so I looked around for other roles in the sector. It was taking a bit of time, and I probably could have stuck it out a bit longer in my search, but I was getting slightly jittery about not being in employment. So then I unexpectedly got an offer and joined one of my old clients, the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants. And I became their sole in-house lawyer as they worked on a merger with a US organization to create the largest accountancy membership body in the world. There were a lot of interesting elements to that role, but when I finished, leading the organization through that merger, I didn't want to stay to do the more mundane in-house legal work. And I ended up working at a multi-sector business in a role that combined commercial and legal aspects. But there was still this yearning to go back to doing something purpose-driven. So I eventually came across On Purpose and decided to apply at the same time as applying for a role in the legal team at the Ministry of Justice that deals with prisons. I ended up getting both of them, and I worked at the MOJ for a few months before starting my On Purpose journey. So next slide, please. Cool. Yeah. So my first placement on the program was in the Student Transitions and Outcomes Department at King's College London, which is one of the largest universities in the UK with around 30,000 students. There, I mainly worked on two projects. The first one was on an inclusive education network. Now, the university had a high-level idea about, developing something to make the university education experience more inclusive, but it was lacking in detail. So I was involved in the scoping work, using some of the training we had on the program about, defining problems and identifying, hypotheses for, root causes of the problems to test out. I helped the university develop a theory of change to sense check how they say the initiative could lead to the outcomes they were looking for. And then the second project I worked on was to develop, plan, and execute an induction program for new students from underrepresented backgrounds, including students who are care experienced or those who are estranged from their families. So KCL's research shows that those students have particular challenges during university, including around finances, the need to work to support themselves through their studies, and also to build friendships with others. As a lot of their peers are from very different, often higher income backgrounds. So, really enjoyed both projects. And then I moved on to my second placement, which is Guy's and St Thomas's Foundation, an organisation with over £1 billion in assets. Historically, it was part of a group with Guy's Hospital and St Thomas's Hospital in Lambeth and Southwark. But when the NHS was set up, the hospitals became an NHS trust and we became an independent foundation, but still with very close links to the hospitals. The placement itself was split between two teams at the time. So the trust engagement team and the impact investing team. In the trust engagement team, they run a grants program that NHS staff can apply to develop ideas that can either improve staff well-being or patient outcomes. However, they noticed that historically, the lower pay band NHS staff do not make use of this grant scheme. So I was therefore put on a project to look at how to co-design a grant scheme to attract more of those staff to apply. And then in the impact investing team, we seek to invest the foundation's money into things that achieve the dual objective of generating a financial return so that we can fund the foundation's work, but also positive health outcomes. And we prioritize opportunities that address the needs of the most vulnerable and underserved populations in our urban areas. My role in that team involved looking for potential opportunities to invest in, meeting fund managers, carrying out due diligence, and if there are suitable opportunities, we take them to our investment committee to seek approval. For the funds we invest in, we then monitor their performance from a financial and impact perspective post-performance. So after On Purpose, I stayed at Guy's in the impact investing team because I really enjoyed the work and also the wider organization, and the colleagues as well has been a big motivating factor in me staying. Now, how long I stay, what happens next, I don't know. I often hear fellows talk about treating your job post On Purpose as a third placement. I don't feel like I've had that yet, so that might happen at some point. What On Purpose has done is to give me the tools, the experience, and the confidence to pursue different roles in the impact sector. So, yeah, I can also talk a little bit about the community and the cohort. Now, before I applied, I also came to one of these webinars. I read the literature on the website as well, and there's a lot of talk about the cohorts. To be honest, I didn't really fully appreciate that aspect of the program beforehand. I was more focused on the placement and training aspects. When you're not part of a group like that, it's difficult to imagine what it's like. But the cohort has, without doubt, been the most important part of my journey. As an adult, it's not very easy to make new friends, let alone 19 new people. We're all people who took a step to pursue a change direction. And, we're all on this incredible journey together. Seeing them all at Friday training was definitely always, the highlight of the week for me. Everyone was able to understand the challenges and experiences that I was having in a way that, my other friends and family couldn't appreciate as well. What I also love is that we all have very different personalities and life experiences that have shaped us. I just felt constantly inspired by the people in my cohort. What's also been great is that On Purpose is very good at creating spaces for us to get to know each other at a deeper level, in a way that maybe even with my pre-existing friends, that wasn't always possible. Now that I've finished the program, I still see people in my cohort on most weeks. So last Friday, I went to a gig at Alexandra Palace with a few of them. And this weekend, a bunch of us are going camping. So, the cohort has, kept together. And then in terms of the community side, one of the invaluable things about the program is that you be part of a community of fellows and associates that number, around 1,000 now, right? And, we now have programs in the UK, France, and Germany, not to mention the wider network of people who have worked with associates over that time, the last 12, 13 years, the placement hosts, the coaches and mentors as well. It's a deep source of knowledge and experience to tap into. If you have any challenges or questions, the On Purpose Slack chat is a great place to ask the community for help. People often also post about jobs, interesting talks, etc. There are initiatives like Random Coffee that you can sign up to, where you get paired with associates and fellows each month for a virtual or in-person coffee. And I've really made use of that and had really interesting conversations with people, not only in the UK but also abroad. So those are really great. On top of that, we also have a lot of fun. So I get involved with this mixed five-a-side football game with different cohorts, friends and partners. And I know other people in my cohort have been playing netball together. So yeah, lots to like about my whole experience.
Oh, thanks, Sergio. Really, yeah, I always, these webinars, I always love hearing about what everyone's up to and how everyone's, how you found it. Cool, just conscious of time, so I'll move us on to the next slide, which I believe this is yours, Rupal.
It is, thank you. So hi everyone, I'm Rupal. So yeah, a bit about me before On Purpose. At university, I studied maths with economics. I still question why to this day, but I did it. It was more chosen because it was my two strongest A levels. And to be honest, I think at that point I hadn't really quite put a lot of thought into what I wanted to do afterwards. But that kind of led me to applying for a graduate scheme at PwC, which is one of the big four accounting firms. So I spent about 4 years there working across audit and something called forensics accounting. And a lot of forensic accounting involves things to do with disputes and arbitrations across the world. And a lot of the projects I was on, unfortunately, was working for big oil companies who were taking money away from poor countries such as Yemen. And something about that just didn't sit right with me. But even then, at this point, I still wasn't sure exactly kind of what path I wanted to take. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to go work for Disney, because who wouldn't be happy working for Disney? So you can see me there with my boss, Mickey Mouse. But yeah, I did a couple of years with Disney working in commercial finance for their TV channels business. So yeah, it was nicer working atmosphere than PwC. I found my job really enjoyable. I didn't hate waking up in the mornings and going to work. But what I did find was that something was missing. And then I guess for my last year at Disney, I was looking for opportunities to try something different. Even within Disney, I was trying to join the sustainability team or try and create one, and just look for places where I could really express my interests. And in the end, a friend introduced me to On Purpose, and ended up applying for it and managed to get on. And so, during On Purpose, you obviously have 2 6-month placements. So for the first 6 months, I worked for an organization called the B Team. So they are kind of a global nonprofit initiative that was co-founded by Richard Branson and Jochen, who is the CEO of Harley Davidson. And their whole purpose is to basically advocate for business practices that take into mind people and planet, and not just kind of bottom line profits. And yeah, they work with some really great leaders. So the CEO of IKEA, and then also Ajay Banga, who is the current president of the World Bank. So yeah, some really influential leaders. And whilst I was there, I was working on a project to do with Africa's energy system. And my role in there was to help convene what we call stakeholders of the system. So that is anyone from energy companies to policymakers to charities to just even general population who use energy, or even those that don't currently have access to energy. And the idea was to come together with a group of people who wouldn't usually be in the same room, and come up with solutions to create a just energy future. So making sure energy is accessible and affordable for everybody. And then currently I'm at Luwot, which is basically a waterless container-based sanitation organization. So they basically create toilets, they look a little bit like portaloos, but they don't require any water. So it's specifically made for poorer and urban communities that often live in temporary housing, such as like shanty towns, where they don't have like a sewage connection. And yeah, my role there was to help them measure their impact. So I help them create an ESG framework for them to use as a benchmark on kind of what things they can improve, what they're doing well at. And then also worked with their marketing team to create some impact marketing assets to really show the impact that we have, but also how our employees feel about working for Luwot, and put those stories out there. And also, whilst On Purpose, aside from kind of the placements, I've had a couple of other really great experiences. So I'm currently on the podcast team for On Purpose, and we're working on a few episodes and kind of pulling a season together, and that's been such a great experience. And then also had the opportunity to help out with some interviews. So again, learning completely different skills, but yeah, an opportunity I might not have had otherwise. Next slide, please. Thank you. So yeah, I'm quite fortunate that the B team, who I had my first placement with, offered me a 1-year fixed term contract to cover my manager's maternity leave. And yeah, I'm really, really happy about that, because I really enjoyed the company culture there. Some of the issues that we'll be working on are like really close to my heart, and something, I feel really passionate about, such as protecting the Amazon rainforest and the indigenous communities that live there. But I'll be honest, like before I started the program, I think my mind was focused completely on like climate and biodiversity, and I hadn't really explored anything else, or even thought about exploring anything else. But On Purpose has really broadened my horizons, and I think my future path, I hope it's somewhere kind of in the food, urban farming, agriculture sector, focusing on like food waste, accessibility and affordability of food and like packaging. So I have no idea how I'm going to get there yet, but it's all about the stepping stones along the way. So yeah, I'm looking forward to where this kind of next year will take me. And then on to the next one. Sorry. Thank you. Mentoring and coaching is something that I've found really useful throughout this year, and it's something that I didn't place a lot of value on before I started. I just didn't know how to use a mentor or how to use a coach, and kind of what I would gain from it. But I think there's one really important thing to note, is that they're both quite different, and the things you can use them for are also quite different. So with a mentor, it's normally somebody who works in the same field that you're working in, or has similar experiences to kind of what you want to achieve. Your conversations are normally driven by you, so you would approach them with a problem, and they would help you out with how to form a solution. And yeah, it's a lot about them sharing their knowledge, their experience, their expertise, and then you kind of trying to take what you want from that and apply that to your situation. On the other hand, a coach is more coach driven. So you will still go to your coach with something that you want to work on, but they will drive the questions. And more often than not, the answers are within you, and it just takes someone to kind of guide you to those answers and kind of pull them out of you. So yeah, they're kind of the main differences, which I hadn't differentiated when I first started. But some of the things I've worked on with my mentor was various approaches to problem solving. So I'd if I had an issue in my placement to do with the work I was on, I would go to my mentor and say, this is the problem, they would give me a couple of solutions. I would say, okay, I think this one works best, but I might try it slightly differently. And yeah, and kind of go with that and then come back to them. And the great thing about them is more often than not, they're open to you emailing them, even if it's within the kind of 2-week period that you have where you don't see them. A couple of times my mentors have reviewed my work or my presentations and kind of given me pointers on that. And also helped with goal setting, which I find quite difficult because I like my really micro to-do list goals so I can like tick them off straight away, but kind of looking more long term. And with my coach, a few things that I've worked on is my motivation. And this is something quite personal to me, but since I've been working from home, I've really struggled to kind of get out of bed in the mornings and kind of get a bit of movement in my mornings. And yeah, they help me pull together something that really has pushed me to do that now. And yeah, even things like finding out what my strengths are and kind of how to use them in my day-to-day role, and maybe how that might mold my path post on purpose. But what I will say for both of them is they've really helped my growth and development this year. They've given me confidence, a bit more clarity, and I think above all, like really supported me when I've been doubting myself or, you know, doubting my ability. And yeah, I've really, really appreciated that part of the program. And I think it's amazing that is part of the program as well. But yeah, I will leave that there.
Amazing. Thanks, Drupal. Really, really interesting as well to hear about your journey. I always I get to talk to so many people. I always forget where like everyone's based, where everyone's coming from, what sector experience they have, where they're going next. It's a really nice reminder. And yeah, thank you both of you for sharing your experience. I'm conscious we're like running a tiny bit over, so I'm just gonna go through the rest of the webinar really quickly. I think there's just a couple of slides left. Okay, so next steps, we had a question around next steps, I think in the Q&A section, but I'll run through it very, very quickly. So we're now in September. September and October are the 2 months to submit your application. The deadline is the 23rd of October. However, we do have an early deadline. There's an early deadline of the 2nd of October, which basically if you apply by that point, you'll receive an invite to one of our community drinks with our associates, which is always we've done that before, and it's a really great way of kind of, yeah, getting an insight into the community, getting to know people face to face, you know, asking any questions that you may have face to face. I think it's, yeah, a lot of times it's just, you know, and also in a more informal way. It's a really great way to kind of start getting involved with On Purpose. So I would encourage you to apply to our early deadline. However, if you don't quite make it, don't worry.